as they wish, civil liberty. And I've given a lot of thought to all of these great writings and the idea of being free in the past week in particular. After a great deal of thought and some research, I finally went back to an old daily word from about a year ago. It touched on the subject of freedom, and it said, being free is both a reality and a feeling. The reality is something experienced in the world around me. The ability to worship the way I choose, travel where I want, speak my mind without fear of prosecution or persecution or retribution. But the feeling of being free is an experience within my mind and my heart and my spirit. So what that says is there's an external and an internal aspect about being free. I have a family member, a very close family member, who this year spent a month living in a city shelter with 80 homeless women. And although she was grateful for that relatively safe space to stay off the streets, she talked about the restrictions on her freedom. Some of those, for example, were be out of the shelter by 8 o'clock every morning, because you need to be hunting for a job or doing something constructive. Be back before 7 each night if we're going to allow you to come back. You don't bring your own food or your own drink in. You're confined to eating what is provided, when it is provided, while you're there. Stay in your assigned space, and it's best to sleep with all of your belongings in bed with you, because that's the only way to be sure that they're not going to disappear. And all of this gave her a new appreciation for freedoms, as well as a strong motivation to find a different way to move to a different level of self-reliance, and it led her to a new level of self-worth eventually as well. And today, not just a few months ago, today she is sober. She is in a responsible position with an engineering firm. She has a little apartment of her own, and she's even saving a little bit of money to help another younger niece save for college. Outstanding. And so she has a different take on freedom. So I asked my niece, what does being free mean to you after this experience? And she wrote this back to me. She said, we are all connected to each other, whether we like it or not, and whether we like that concept or not. She said, my freedom is defined at the end of the day by having shared all that I was capable of sharing to strengthen the ethos between us and perpetuate the goodness between us. If I can fall asleep in peace after contemplating that, I am free. Whew, come a long way. So all of this motivated me to do a little bit more unscientific surveying of family and friends and acquaintances and even some famous people, and asking them to share their unanalyzed, in other words, don't analyze it, don't think about it a lot, your first thoughts on what being free means. And those interviewed included people like an artist and a musician, a veterinary doctor, a photographer, a dishwasher, a body worker, an engineer, a politician, a poet, a philosopher, and even an attorney. But not one of them spoke, when I asked them to do it that way, about politics or the Constitution or nationalism, religion, or battles for freedom. No one spoke about those things that our daily word, the one that I read to you a moment ago, referred to as the reality of freedom, that external aspect of freedom. And none, thank goodness, were as blunt as this French philosopher, Denis Diderot, who said, I love this, men will never be free until the last king is strangled with the entrails of the last priest. Wow. Yeah. I'm not a politician or a priest. Rather, each one of these people spoke and got very personal on the subject of being free. Sometimes it sounded simplistic, and sometimes it sounded very deep. But in reality, what I heard from each person was deep and simple, and it was complex too. For example, One fellow said, being free means retirement from my job, being free with time to follow my passions or rest my bones. Maybe some of you have thought about freedom like that. Another said, being able to do what is the right thing, the ethical way, when others in my profession are sticking together to ensure the most money is made. So out of all of those different professions, which one do you think that was? Acting with integrity, even when others disagree. He said, my integrity is sometimes all that I have left, the very last inch of me. But within that last inch, I am free. And I can relate personally to that one a bit. 25 years ago now, I worked as a business area manager for an engineering firm. Had maybe 15, 20 people that reported to me. A lot of them were in the field locating at clients' locations. And there was a lot of pressure to bring in business and maximize the bottom line. Sometimes there was even encouragement and pressure to fudge the numbers, the hours a bit, when it came to reporting the billable hours of our employees to clients that we served. And I didn't do that. And eventually, one day, one of the owners of the company, who I happened to report to, flew in on his private jet from Oklahoma, unexpectedly, and he walked into my office, and he handed me a pink slip. You know what that means? I was surprised, and I was a little angry for a moment, but then I felt empowered. I felt free. I felt that I got a piece of myself back when he handed me that pink slip. It was a gift, and I've worked for myself ever since. I've never had another job for him or anyone else. That reminded me a little bit of the author Robert Heinlein. You know he's the author of 1984. We've heard a lot about 1984 this year. He wrote, I am free, no matter what rules surround me. If I find them tolerable, I tolerate them. If I find them too obnoxious, I break them. I am free because I know that I alone am morally responsible for everything I do. Interesting take on freedom. Another take on freedom was some words that the musician Patti Smith, some of you are familiar with, wrote. She talked about being able to make her own decisions and her own mistakes. And she wrote, being free to write the wrong words. Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes. Another friend of mine who's a therapist said, being free is being able to have my own thoughts and opinions. If I choose, being able to reveal my own self, my perceptions, and my own emotions. And then the author, Virginia Woolf, she was a firebrand, and she wrote an essay called A Room of One's Own. And she wrote this about freedom. She said, lock up your libraries if you like. Lock up your libraries if you like. But there is no gate, no bolt, no lock that you can set upon the freedom of my mind. Hear to that. I have a nephew, his name is Aaron, and I was talking to him about freedom recently. He's a musician, and he gave me a quote from another musician, Jim Morrison, from The Doors. Morrison said, I thought this was pretty good, the most important kind of freedom is to be what you really are. You trade in your reality for a role. You trade in your sense for an act. You give up your ability to feel in exchange for a mask. There can't be any large-scale revolution until there's a personal revolution on a personal level. It's got to happen inside first, going back to that external and internal aspects of freedom. Another old friend gave me this take on freedom, on being free. She said, I became free when I forgave. I was imprisoned by old grievances of the past, and the new business of life could not go on when I was locked into the outrage and the tit for tat. For Forgiveness finally freed me, the forgiver, from that nightmare. We could talk all day on that topic, and last week, Kathleen, that was your topic. And I encourage you, if you weren't here last Sunday, to go to our website, listen to Kathleen's talk, because we have those talks on. Chris, thank you for making that happen. Thank you. A couple of people that I spoke with talked about the connection between freedom and fear. One said that when I exposed myself to my very deepest fears, fear of heights, fear of being alone, fear of snakes, fear of public speaking, after that, the fear had no power, and I became free. Think about your own deep fears, or what they've been in the past in some cases. I mentioned my son earlier, Matt, and Matt was always paralyzed by the fear of public speaking. You know, he could act, he acted, you know, in some plays, but when it came to public speaking and talking about what he had to say, he was paralyzed by fear. He struggled through this throughout college and throughout high school, and then he was in the Air Force. And he could have gone on throughout his life and avoided public speaking. But his Air Force commander gave him a choice. He said, take a promotion, become a trainer and a leader, or stay on the flight line and continue sucking up jet fuel for as long as you choose to. Well, he took the step. He overcame his fear, and he became the man that he is today. Now, the man that he is today isn't because he's not afraid of public speaking, but because he overcame that fundamental fear of expressing himself. That was important. Similarly, Aristotle, who never had any fear, you would think, said, he who has overcome his fears will truly be free. So a lot of people give a lot of thought to this, too. Now, whether we talk about it much or not, one of the biggest fears that many of us have is the fear of death. Anybody afraid of death? Well, only one hand went up. That means the rest of you are ready to go. One brave soul said to me, we're not going to live forever. But it often takes a long time to learn that. But when you do, everything changes inside of you. You're not the same. This can become a realization that it is catastrophic or crushing, but it also can be liberating. Excuse me. Because it's about being free. Another said on the same subject, I am free when I embrace the final hour with all my heart. Easier said than done, perhaps, but it's true. My sister Susie, she died almost about a year ago, just about the anniversary of her death, and some of you have heard about this. She was an artist, and she was younger than I. And in her last 2 years especially, she'd gone through some really intense suffering of body and mind and emotions, not just with herself, but with family. And I knew that, but it was when I read one of her journals after she had passed on last year that I came to understand better about her feelings about being free. On that reality level, for her, freedom was about making her own decisions about how to take care of her own body, not leaving that to the medical profession. Now, I couldn't always agree with her decisions. Of course, she didn't ask me either whether I agreed or not, but I respected them. So that was on the physical, that external level. On the feeling level, on that internal level, she wrote in this journal, our bodies are temporary houses for spirit. Our spirit continues on. Our spirit is what brings true happiness. And she wrote also about what she called paths to freedom. She said that moments of silence and stillness allow us to find our balance and allow our creative spirit to flourish. And when one is in that beautiful creative space, remember this is from an artist, when we're in that beautiful creative space and connection to the creative force, we are in a state of being free. How true. Another artist, this one a poet, Maya Angelou. She wrote a very famous poem she won awards for. It was called The Caged Bird. So I'm going to read it. It's not too long. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wings in the orange sun's rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. And the caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill. For the caged bird sings of freedom. But the free bird thinks of another breeze and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill where the caged bird sings of freedom. My personal take on being free stems a lot from teachings in Buddhism and Buddhist teachers and different ones, and one in particular wrote this: letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, possessions, we cannot be free. And another author, Toni Morrison, said very clearly in her book, The Song of Solomon, she put it a little more starkly. She said, you want to fly? You got to give up the shit that weighs you down. Same thing. So being free may be about letting go of the opinions of others, letting go of the opinions about ourselves, letting go of things that lie beyond our control, letting go of the clutter of things and thoughts, letting go of our anger and our grievances that just don't permit life to proceed anew, letting go of our pride that separates us, letting go of our fears that chain us up, letting go of the illusion that you're going to live forever, and equally letting go of the illusion that we are not infinite in nature. So I've pretty much decided that being free is what our natural state is. It's the way we start out, and it's really the way we end this life. It's everything in the middle that seems to complicate things. It does for me. So I want to pose the same question to each of you. What does being free mean to you? Understand there's no right answer, but make it personal. Thank you. So, we end this in many ways, and we had a request today to end it with song.
Okay.
Let there be peace on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.